What is happening, my degenerates? How are we doing? I hope you guys are doing well. Welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Gods Extra Point. I'm your man, Brandon Big Poppy Medina. We have a lot to get into, man. We just finished Monday Night Football. It was absolutely awful. It was tough to watch, and we are on a severe betting losing streak. And so with that, let's get into a little bit about our conversations today. Let's talk a little bit about what we saw with Monday Night Football first and foremost. If you are new to the show, the Fantasy Gods Extra Point is just my version of giving you guys another extra tidbits for fantasy football, extra advice for betting, which it looks like you should be fading me right now as things go. You can hear it in my voice. I'm screaming at the TV. I just got back from Austin City Limits Music Festival, and then I have to watch this, dog poop of a game, just absolute basura, and bet on the game, of course, because I'm an idiot. Unfortunately, we just didn't hit. Romeo Dobbs missing in action. Jaden Reed missing in action. Josh Jacobs can't run the ball at all. Jordan Love finally looks human, just does not have a great game, or does not have even the game that's worth betting for. So, overall, game ends 13-17, snooze fest from the jump. Snooze fest. 13 points in the first half, 10 of those points coming in the second quarter by the Las Vegas Raiders. The Raiders get that win. They move on to 2-3. Packers move to 2-3. Who cares? Boring. I don't know what's going on here. Like I said, this show is all about, giving a little bit more information and helping you guys out with waiver wire ads, trade targets, betting, all that good stuff. Unfortunately, right now is a rough time, man. Right now is a really rough time as a fan and as a fantasy football player. Running backs are scarce. There's like nothing left on the waiver wire for you as a player. And then not only that, Justin Jefferson, the prodigy son in the Minnesota Vikings organization, out for at least 4 weeks on IR. And then you look at, what opportunities there might be for other players. Still, KJ Osborne could be a possible flex now. Jordan Addison obviously is a must start. TJ Hawkinson must start. But aside from that, it's not looking too great for the Minnesota Vikings. You have Cam Akers, you have Alexander Madison. We still don't really know what's going to happen with that. This was probably Madison's last week of realistic fantasy input, I would assume. So with that, I think this is a perfect trade time for Madison, especially for players who, have some injuries at the running back position. Maybe someone that has that timidness with Aaron Jones, who's missed a few games, the Austin Eckler manager who's getting nervous, the managers who have, running backs. Maybe they didn't take DeAndre Swift and they took a chance on Kenneth Gainwell or somebody else, and they're feeling nervous. Miles Sanders, running back manager, stuff like that. But what we did see this week, George Kittle, holy hell. George Kittle, tight ends in general. George Kittle, Sam Laporta, guys like that, massive weeks. George Kittle had a crazy week with multiple touchdowns. And you see that, guys who maybe are not scoring as much, especially like someone like George Kittle that you took pretty high in your drafts, finally paying off. However, guys who you also took high as wide receiver 2s, if not low-end wide receiver 1s, if you're in a deeper league, or, maybe you waited a little bit too long on wide receiver. Somebody that we saw struggle really badly was Devontae Smith, man. 1.6 points. I have no idea what happened to Devontae Smith. He got targeted 5 times. The past 2 times this season, he got targeted 5 times. He had 131 and a touchdown, and then the other time he had at least 4 catches and 28 yards. 23.1 fantasy points in PPR, and then at least about 7 points in PPR. This time around, 5 targets, 1.6 points. Don't know what happened at all, but I think he's an absolute trade for target. Go trade for Devontae Smith, especially if you have, the T. Higgins injury, the Justin Jefferson injury, opportunities like that. Somebody who is a massive trade bait if you're looking to get running backs or a premier quarterback or a premier, another wide receiver. I wouldn't trade him. I think he still has great fantasy value. But man, DJ Moore, welcome to the show, baby. DJ Moore, absolutely dominant the past few weeks. And I don't think anybody really saw that coming. Another wide receiver who's struggling that could be a trade for target. It's going to be tough to do in Texas because of Cowboys fans, but CD Lamb only had 8.9 fantasy points. He faces the Chargers, goes on a bye week, and then comes back and faces the Rams, Philadelphia, the Giants, and Carolina. Those are the next few games on their docket. I think he could play a huge part in those games. One player that you did probably draft that is awful right now. I mean, just extremely bad for fantasy football that a lot of people did take a chance on. You didn't take him with anything, massive as far as value in drafts. But Brandon Cooks, guys, let's talk about Brandon Cooks real quick. We haven't mentioned him at all throughout the season for the Fantasy Gods, which you can catch on Sundays from 10:30 to 11:30 a.m. And then, of course, we have this extra point coming out Tuesday and Thursday to get you locked in for Thursday games, get you kind of updated with some news and storylines as well as some betting advice. But Brandon Cooks, you took Brandon Cooks as the possible wide receiver 2 for the Dallas Cowboys. He has not been that, right? You got him because of his speed. You got him because of the explosive plays. You got him because he could be a flex start, if not a wide receiver 2 during the right matchups. Well, during this season, right? We're already down to, past 5 games now. For this season, Brandon Cooks has 9 catches, 73 yards, and no play longer than 16 yards. That's coming from our boy Ed Werder over at ESPN. He put that out. Again, 9 catches, 73 yards, no play longer than 16 yards. We've seen multiple wide receivers hit that exact line already this year in one game. I mean, it's ridiculous. So he is not very good. He is droppable 100%. Do not hold out hope for what he could be, for what the possibilities are. Don't wait. Don't wait to make a move and get Brandon Cooks off of your roster or trade him to somebody maybe who is desperate. I just don't think you're going to be able to trade him at all. He's not been good whatsoever. Now let's talk a little bit about waiver wire ads. It's Tuesday. It's a massive day for opportunity with the waiver wire. We are in week 6. We are looking at a waiver wire dead zone. There's not going to be many people that you are going to be able to grab on your waiver wire who are going to be helpful. I'm going to mention a few. I'm going to try to stick to names who are about under 53% owned on your waivers. So players that you can absolutely find in about half of your leagues most of the time. One that I like a lot is Jaleel McLaughlin over in Denver. I was forced to start him because of an injury to my players. I had, Rashad White was on bye, Khalil Herbert was out, who I don't even want on my team. And so I started Jaleel McLaughlin, who played with Samaje Perine. And listen, he did a great job, right? He filled in because of the Javonte Williams injury. And so McLaughlin had 12 combined touches to Samaje Perine's 10, but he got a touchdown. And even without the touchdown, still would have ended in double-digit numbers for fantasy football. He had 17.9 fantasy football points last week against Chicago. He had 19.4. He's looking like he's getting kind of the solid treatment while we have this Javonte Williams injury, and is getting treated as if he's the kind of the third down back. He's catching passes in the backfield, which is nice. And so I do like Jaleel McLaughlin if you're looking for a flex start or daily fantasy. We always talk about daily fantasy here. So I do think Jaleel McLaughlin might not be such a bad opportunity to look at. The other player that I like, especially if you're looking late deep, and he had a bad week, so not many people are going to run to the waiver wire to go and pick him up. But I do like a player named Michael Wilson for the Arizona Cardinals. Michael Wilson is somebody I do think could be very solid, and I think right now he had a really bad week last week. Only had 2 targets and 1 reception for 18 yards. I know you're like, Brandon, what the hell? Why would you tell me to pick this guy up? Well, the 2 weeks before that, 10.6 fantasy points and 26.6 fantasy points. He's not going to be a game changer for your fantasy football league or for your roster, but I think as the season progresses, he's going to be the clear-cut wide receiver 2 for Arizona Cardinals. And what that means to fantasy, who knows? Arizona's not very good, but Hollywood Brown is, I believe, a top 13 wide receiver, top 12 wide receiver in fantasy football for PPR right now. And that just means that that's a great opportunity for Arizona to hopefully keep that going. As far as other waiver wire additions that maybe you should be looking at, maybe you should be scouting and trying to figure out if it makes sense for your team, looking at running backs, Deontay Foreman could be somebody, of course. I don't really think he needs to be in your lineups nor on your rosters as it stands right now. Maybe just kind of keep a tab there for Deontay Foreman. But KJ Osborne is massive right now. He's only 21.6% rostered. You need to go put in every single one of your leagues at least a claim to possibly get KJ Osborne. He is going to be the wide receiver 2 over in Minnesota while Justin Jefferson is out. And to be honest, he could possibly be the wide receiver 1. He was really, really solid with the Vikings last year. Started off really hot with the Vikings this year. Had 6 points in the first game, but then 12 points the second game, 10 points the third game, had 9 points in this last game. That's great flex opportunity. He's not going to be your starting wide receiver, but a great flex option. So I think KJ Osborne needs to be absolutely looking to be added in your waiver wire. Additionally, I do think some other opportunities for some wide receivers across the league could be somebody like a Wan'Dale Robinson could be interesting only because of the targets. He's getting, about 5.5 to 6 targets a game. Now what that turns into, it could very much change, right? Against Seattle, he had 6 targets for 40 yards when he got 5 balls. And then he had the same amount of targets, same amount of catches, only 18 yards against Miami. So what those can turn into could differ for sure. But I do think that's a great opportunity. Finally, one that we haven't talked enough about is my boy Josh Reynolds over for the Detroit Lions. Josh Reynolds is also a John Jay grad here in San Antonio, Texas. But Josh Reynolds, man, listen to this dude. He had 12 points the first game, 23.6 points the second game against Seattle. Gives you a goose egg against Atlanta. People got nervous, didn't want to pick him up. Well, against Green Bay in week 4, had 10 points. Against Carolina this past week, had 4 receptions, 76 yards, and a touchdown for 17.6 fantasy points. Why would you not want that, right? Why would you not want the opportunity to grab somebody like that? So I like that a lot. I think he's going to be a great player. I think he's going to be a very solid fantasy asset for this year. Additionally, looking at everybody else that we have at the wide receiver room, somebody who could be a boom bust and has played really, really well the past 2 weeks, has had 18 points the past 2 weeks. That's something to note. Something to note for sure. Take note of that is Curtis Samuel. We've seen Curtis Samuel be extremely, extremely solid in fantasy football. He just knows how to make plays happen. He's electric. He can run the ball. He can rush the ball. So I like Curtis Samuel. Another one, if you are in a running back pitch right now, if you are in a running back pickle, right? You just can't figure it out. Running backs are scarce, right? They are gold in fantasy football. And right now, nobody is mining for gold. Either you got it or you don't, unfortunately. Justice Hill is there on the fantasy football waiver wire. He could have a path to fantasy football relevance. Out of the past 4 weeks that he has played, he had 12.9 points in the first game. That came off of 2 touchdowns, though, so very touchdown dependent. And then his last game, again, 12.5 fantasy football points, but again, very touchdown dependent. You take away those touchdowns, we're talking about a 6-point game, and then even worse on the other side. Somebody who is on waiver wires right now, who has finally hit waivers. It took a while, but it has happened. And if you want to take a chance on a second half of the season come up, Antonio Gibson is just under 50% rostered on ESPN. He's at 49.3. That is a very interesting opportunity. Antonio Gibson was drafted. We're not talking about a guy that wasn't taken at all in your draft and has just been a free agent like most of these guys. Antonio Gibson was drafted to be people's running back 3, running back 2 in certain situations. So I do think that's a great opportunity. Another one who is somebody I think you should look at, especially only because of the target share that he's getting right now and the opportunity he's getting. And he is just over 50% owned. So don't get crazy with me. Don't get all mad. All right. But go check Dalton Schultz at tight end. Tight ends have been rough this year. He might be a sneaky play now. Very touchdown dependent. I will say that. You're not going to be banking on Dalton Schultz to go, score a touchdown every week. But when he does, he's been very, very solid. But somebody who has been really, really good and very sneakily good and consistent. What wins fantasy football leagues? Consistency, people. Let's talk about this man's past 4 weeks, and let's see if you can guess who it is. So in week 2, 8.7 points. Week 3, 8.7 points again on the dot. Week 4 against Jacksonville, 15.5 points. And last week against Houston, 10.7. Okay, Brandon, well, listening to kind of the schedule, the way you just explained things, that sounds like a Falcon. Oh my God, it's Kyle Pitts on the waiver wire? He is not. Who is Jonnu Smith. And Jonnu Smith looks very, very solid. And let me just say this. Jonnu Smith, as it stands right now in fantasy football, has been very relevant and more consistent than Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts had a 15-point game this last week. Jonnu Smith, again, still had a very solid game for the Atlanta Falcons with 10.7. So if you're looking for a consistency, if you're looking for that 8 points to 10 points to 7 points area, Jonnu Smith could be a very sneaky play, and I do think you could benefit from taking somebody like that in the waiver wire, especially this late. You're not going to be getting anybody incredible right now off the waiver wire. Unfortunately, it's just we're too late in the season. You had an opportunity to get, Devon A. Chains and the guys like that. Those opportunities are gone now. It's just not going to happen. Somebody that you could take a chance on if Miles Sanders is out is Chuba Hubbard again. But it's just the names we're mentioning. These guys are not going to start aside from maybe a Josh Reynolds, maybe a Curtis Samuel in certain opportunities at a flex position. But somebody that, is possibly out there too in certain leagues could still be, the Luke Musgraves, who just had a solid game right now this past Monday, the game we just saw that was awful. Luke Musgrave was the only person making something happen. 7 targets and 6 receptions, but only gives you 34 yards. So had 9.4 fantasy points. But pretty solid outing for somebody who doesn't have normally solid outings. So I think, the tight end spot is the easiest spot to maneuver when it comes to flexing them in and out. Again, in one of my leagues, I have Brock Purdy on the waiver wire. That's ridiculous. He's a quarterback 5. As I'm talking right now, I'm literally putting a claim in as I am talking. That's ridiculous. But what I'm saying is, you don't know what's on the waiver wire. You got to just go check. I have Russell Wilson on the waiver wire, which is ridiculous. There's opportunities everywhere. You need to go check your waiver wire. Go see what is up to date, what could be happening, who's moving. And like I said, look to trade, man. You want a running back? Trade for James Cook. He had a really sucky game, did not play well. Trade for James Conner, top 20 running back. Right? You're looking for tight ends. Like I said, there's plenty on the waiver wire right now. I would definitely go look at the waiver wire first. But if you are looking at running backs, you got to target running backs who have struggled, and that's a scary time to do so. Maybe you can go get an Aaron Jones who's been out a few weeks, and maybe you could offer up something. Maybe you can package deal and go get yourself another great wide receiver or Devontae Smith, and maybe you can package 2 lower end players to go get that. There's going to be a lot of opportunities to make trades, make things happen in fantasy football this week. As it stands right now, if you are 1-4, if you are 0-4 or 0-5, sorry. If you are 2-3, you need to be looking to make some moves to get over that hump. What's going to get you into the playoffs? What's going to get you into the opportunities that you can be successful? So start looking at that. Start thinking about that. This has been the Fantasy Gods Extra Point. My name is Brandon Medina. As always, guys, continue to check out the platform. Follow us here at the Alamo City Sports Network on YouTube. Please subscribe and like, and leave some positive comments. Leave your questions. I can get them answered in the next show, or go follow me on Twitter at Big Poppy Brandon M. If you want to take any bets this week, like I said, we still have to be looking at, what the lines are going to change into for this upcoming game for the NFL when it comes to the Thursday night football. But just looking at things, some of the ones that I do like, that I do think are possible here, that I think will be pretty solid opportunities to make some money. Again, I have not been hitting on all cylinders lately. It has not been super, super great. I love Marvin Mims right now. He's at 16.5 receiving yards, which is crazy. And it's because he had just 1 catch this last game. And I think they're almost overcorrecting. I love Kareem Jackson's tackles and assists. I think that makes a lot of sense as well. Additionally, looking at things, you got Jerry Jeudy there at 55.5 receiving yards. That is right in the middle of where things are for him. I really don't like that. I really don't know about taking that. And then you have Javonte Williams. He's limited at practice, I believe, on Monday today. And so looking at things, I like Isaiah Pacheco. I think he could really have a huge game. I like his I don't know, receiving yards are set at 12.5. His rushing yards are at 71.5, which seems a little high, but I do think he can get there. But I think the two right now, just looking at things, because remember, it's early. Not all the lines have come out. The two lines I like a lot would be Marvin Mims, 16.5 receiving yards, Kareem Jackson, 6+ total tackles and assists. I like the rounded numbers at 6 because if he hits it, it pushes. If he goes over, no problem. But tackles and assists, you just get even more opportunity. I mean, the last game he had 10, the game before he had 8, and the game before that he had 7. I like that one a lot, especially against a Kansas City offense who should be getting the ball a lot, and the defense should be making a lot of tackles, and hopefully, he hits that pretty quickly. So with that, those are some of the bets that I like. Again, this is the Fantasy Gods Extra Point. If you want to play any of these prop bets, I'm going to include my price picks and my underdog fantasy links in the description below. Please click those and join in on the fun. And again, this is the Fantasy Gods Extra Point coming to you every Tuesday and Thursday. And don't forget, we go live every Sunday from 10:30 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. Central Time for the Fantasy Gods live show. Get your questions in. Let me know what you're thinking. Who are you looking to play? Who are you looking to drop? Who are you looking to trade? All that good stuff. We will talk to you soon. And as always, may the Fantasy Gods be in your favor.